a genocide around, which is good because that sort of thing makes people uncomfortable. There was no genocide-adjacent follow-up. Any family still there? Understanding moo. Do you ever visit? Sympathetic smile. Beautiful country. Darkening with tears. When I visited, visible on lower lid. They were so friendly. Adela just nodded. I wondered if she'd go for the rare fourth option and pronounce the country dirty. She would never refer to herself as a refugee, or even a former refugee. I added. It's been quite weird to hear people say that. The people you will be working with are also unlikely to use the term. We prefer expat. In answer to your question, I'm the Vice Secretary of Expatriation. And they are expats from history. Sorry? Adela shrugged. We have time travel, she said, like someone describing the coffee machine. Welcome to the ministry. Anyone who has ever watched a film with time travel, or read a book with time travel, or dissociated on a delayed public transport vehicle considering the concept of time travel, will know that the moment you start to think about the physics of it, you are in a crock of shit. How does it work? How can it work? I exist at the beginning and end of this account simultaneously, which is a kind of time travel, and I'm here to tell you, don't worry about it. All you need to know is that in your near future, the British government developed the means to travel through time, but had not yet experimented with doing it. In order to avoid the chaos inherent in changing the course of history, if history could be considered a cohesive and singular chronological narrative, another crock of shit, it was agreed that it would be necessary to extract people from historical war zones, natural disasters, and epidemics. These expatriates to the 21st century would have died in their own timelines anyway. Removing them from the past ought not to impact the future. No one had any idea what travelling through time might do to the human body, so the second reason that it was important to pick people who would have died in their own timelines is that they might well die in ours, like deep-sea fish brought up to the beach. Perhaps there were only so many epochs the human nervous system could stand. If they got the temporal equivalent of the bends and sluiced into grey and pink jelly in a ministry laboratory, at least it wouldn't be, statistically speaking, murder. Assuming that the expats survived, that meant they would be people, which is a complicating factor. When dealing with refugees, especially en masse, it's better not to think of them as people. It messes with the paperwork. Nevertheless, when the expats were considered from a human rights perspective, they fit the Home Office criteria for asylum seekers. It would be ethically sparse to assess nothing but the physiological effects of time travel. To know whether they had truly adjusted to the future, the expats needed to live in it. Monitored by a full-time companion, which was, it transpired, the job I'd successfully interviewed for. They called us bridges, I think because assistant was below our pay grades. Language has gone on a long walk from the 19th century. Sensible used to mean sensitive. Gay used to mean jolly. Lunatic asylum and asylum seeker both use the same basic meaning of asylum. An inviolable place of refuge and safety. We were told we were bringing the expats to safety. We refused to see the blood and hair on the floor of the madhouse. I was thrilled to get the job. I'd plateaued where I was, in the languages department of the Ministry of Defence. I worked as a translator consultant specialising in Southeast Asia, specifically Cambodia. I'd learned the languages I translated from at university. Despite my mother speaking Khmer to us at home, I hadn't retained it through my formative years. I came to my heritage as a foreigner. I liked my languages job well enough, but I'd wanted to become a field agent, and after failing the field exams twice, I was at a bit of a loss for career trajectory. It wasn't what my parents had had in mind for me. When I was a very small child, my mother made her ambitions known. She wanted me to be Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, I would do something about British foreign policy, and I would also take my parents to fancy governmental dinners. I would have a chauffeur.